President number 30. Well, he gains the presidency with the death of Warren G. Harding, and our 30th president is a Republican, Calvin Coolidge. And like I said, he became president when Harding died. Now, what he said right when he took office, "I think the American public wants a solemn ass as president, and I think I'll go along with them." That was his quote. Now, what was Calvin Coolidge like as president? Well, he would sleep 11 hours, sometimes 10 hours a day. He felt that it gave him energy to sleep a long time. He was in bed by 10 o'clock, often slept until 8 o'clock in the morning, and always took a nap in the afternoon. So this was this guy. Well, his nickname was Silent Cal. He didn't really like to talk much. He would listen, but a very, very quiet man. He suffered tragedy during his presidency. His 16-year-old son, who loved playing tennis on the White House lawn, he just got a blister, and that blister became infected, and he got blood poisoning and died. And so this devastated Calvin Coolidge. Well, his presidency, probably no president has ever tried so hard to say so little as Calvin Coolidge. His nickname was Silent Cal. Silence was almost a religion to him. During his presidency, the company Schick patents an electric razor. During his presidency, Bobby Jones wins the U.S. Open. And in 1924, the first Winter Olympics take place. Now, there's a really important, very popular American kind of philosopher, Will Rogers, is at the height of his popularity during the presidency of Calvin Coolidge. In 1924, the most popular form of cheap entertainment were radios. And there were 2.5 million radios in the homes of American people. In 1924, J. Edgar Hoover is appointed director of the FBI. Now, the most popular dance during his presidency is the Charleston. It's the most fashionable dance. You like to do crossword puzzles? Crossword puzzles emerged during Calvin Coolidge's presidency. The state of Tennessee forbids teaching sex education in schools. In 1926, Gene Tooney wins the heavyweight championship when he defeats Jack Dempsey. The airplane, remember, airplanes are getting pretty popular, and airplanes now are used to disperse chemicals on cornfields or crops, or crop dusting it was called. In 1927, Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs. In 1927, a new dance comes. The foxtrot becomes the most popular dance. And in 1927, the Harlem Globetrotters, that great entertaining basketball team, is organized. In 1928, the first scheduled TV broadcast by WGY out of New York. Amelia Earhart becomes the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Coolidge, he is elected after he fulfills the term of Warren G. Harding, and former President William Howard Taft, who is now the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, swears him in. Now, if you remember when Warren G. Harding was president, that Teapot Dome scandal of Harding, well, it is revealed in the Senate. The Senate has an investigation, and it taints Calvin Coolidge's administration and his presidency. During his presidency, Native Americans are finally given the right to vote. Finally. And in the state of Arizona, they wouldn't get the right to vote until 1948. But isn't it ironic that the first American is the last to receive the right to vote? During his presidency, Tennessee passed a law that made it illegal to teach evolution. During his presidency, Charles Lindbergh, in this transatlantic solo fight, makes him a national hero. During his presidency, this laissez-faire economy, laissez-faire, it is a belief of how economy should be, and the belief is that if business is left alone, and we don't have a lot of government rules, and it's unregulated, that it would benefit the nation. And this is a pretty strong Republican stance, that our economy would be better if business is just allowed to go off on its own, to create jobs, business will grow, laissez-faire economy. The annual income in the United States, yearly, rose from $512 to $716. So, hey, we're improving here. We're making a little bit more money. He believed that it was not government's role to help people with social and economic problems. And Calvin Coolidge, he was an isolationist. He believed the United States should stay out of the way of other nations except in matters of self-defense. The Kellogg-Briand Pact of 1828 is signed by 15 nations, and they pledged not to make war against one another except in self-defense. Henry Ford builds the Model T. It's a car that everybody can afford by the mid-1920s. So everybody can afford the automobile. Something else happens during the 1920s. And that is, for the first time in American history, the youth, I'm talking about the 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, they get a whole new identity. Up until this time, didn't have much of an identity really. You were a kid or you were an adult. But now these young adults that were going to go out and the youth are gaining a whole new identity during the 1920s. Now remember, we have a few presidents during the 1920s. We have Woodrow Wilson at the beginning of the 20s. We have Warren G. Harding. We have Calvin Coolidge, and then later we'll have Herbert Hoover in a short time in the 20s. During this time, young people are gaining a whole new identity, and the cars are going on car dates, you might say. You know, going out and dancing and maybe partying a little bit and having fun and kind of pushing the boundaries. The girls, the women of the 20s, after World War I, Americans were looking for a little fun in the 1920s. And women who now have the right to vote, they were independent, they were achieving greater freedom. They gained the right to vote. More and more women were employed and making money, and we see a new woman emerge during the 1920s, and she was called a flapper. A flapper was a young, emancipated young woman who embraced the new fashions and urban attitudes. A lot of times the flapper, she was out dancing like the Charleston or the Foxtrot. She was drinking illegally in a speakeasy, because if you remember, in Prohibition, the buying, the distribution, the consumption of alcohol was illegal during the 1920s. So she was out dancing, she was out drinking. Her skirts were shorter. You know, she was just kind of out having fun, smoking cigarettes. Oh my goodness, a lot of people thought the world was going to hell. And so the flappers, the new women, many women were entering the workplace as nurses, teachers, librarians, secretaries. They earned less than men, though, and were prevented from obtaining certain jobs. But we do see the women's movement now, the right to vote, women becoming a little more powerful during the 1920s. Well, this has been our 30th president, Silent Cal, Calvin Coolidge, and see we talk about number 31, Herbert Hoover.